Welcome to the Beau Show. Today's show is one of remembrance and honor. I want to make this episode all about two of the fallen. Officer Jason Rivera, a 22-year-old New York City police officer who was killed on January 21st by a suspect when he was responding to a domestic dispute in Harlem. Rivera's partner, Wilbert Mora, also died days after wounds from the event. The officers were shot by LaShawn McNeil, who had a pistol with a high-capacity magazine and was trying to flee the scene. Mayor Eric Adams said McNeil also had yet another gun under his mattress. It's worth mentioning that the Glock used in this tragic killing was stolen from Baltimore in 2017. 5 NYPD officers have been shot this month, according to Adams, but Rivera was the first to pass away. Saturday was supposed to be his last day of work before 3 days off. Rivera joined the police academy in 2020, and apparently part of his motivation was due to seeing his brother get the stop and frisk treatment in New York. But then he saw improvements made in the department. When he saw the department pushing to create better community relations, it spurred him to join the police force to continue helping those relations. It seems that Rivera was the first in his family to ever join the police, and he did so quite proudly. He said it was the right career for him. And as most of us know by now, crime has spiked nationwide, but it's particularly pronounced in New York City, where the latest data shows a 21% increase from this time last year. For many New Yorkers, this is like the wild, wild west. Eric Adams is the new mayor of New York and a former police officer, so surely this will have to sit squarely on his shoulders. After all, past mayors like de Blasio and Governor Cuomo had basically done nothing to make New York a safe place. In fact, they were more concerned with you social distancing and wearing a mask than they were about crime and guns. Rivera's death is prompting an interstate task force of 9 northeastern states to meet soon to figure out ways to stop the flow of illegal firearms. And I think it's important to mention that whenever we discuss gun laws, because New York is not a gun-friendly state in terms of legal firearms, however, as was the case with this tragedy with officers Rivera and Mora, their deaths came at the expense of an illegal gun. Adams wants Congress to pass universal background checks and to make a firearm trafficking a federal crime. He also wants to increase penalties for what's called straw purchasing, or when someone buys a gun for someone who can't pass a background check. While Adams is seeking Congress to act, I have to wonder what he feels he can do in his own city rather than just trying to get Congress to act. Furthermore, the amount of illegal weapons already in circulation is really the problem, because there's no way that you can legislate that away or eradicate it. That's always something that gets lost in the gun debate. Now, if this were a white male that was doing the shooting, you'd see every Democrat in America start pushing gun action. But because that wasn't the case here, and the deceased are Hispanic cops, you won't hear too much from Democrats on this, because it's not politically convenient enough. The New York subways are also a major issue. Recently, a 62-year-old man got pushed on the tracks of the subway and had to be hospitalized. This is similar to another event in January in which a 40-year-old woman was pushed into a subway train and died. This was considered a random attack, but maybe this doesn't seem so random anymore. And even so, how safe can a place be if random attacks cause you to die while trying to get on the subway? On New Year's Day, a Good Samaritan died trying to help someone who had fallen onto the subway tracks after a gang assault. When I think about New York, this is what I think about. This is not a new problem, although it is certainly an exacerbated problem. And that means that the leadership there is inept at keeping it a safe city. At some point, New Yorkers have to hold those that they elected accountable. Just because Cuomo is out and Hochul is in doesn't change much. I'll discuss this more in a bit, but right now I do want to highlight the amazing and stirring salute to Rivera from the NYPD, which was held on the streets of New York City and a service at St. Patrick's Cathedral. Watch this video when the hearse goes by, how the officers salute him.
As the body goes by, all the policemen are saluting.
I mean, if that doesn't move you, I don't know what will. The NYPD's motto is Fidelis ad mortem, which is Latin for faithful unto death. Officers Rivera and Mora were exemplary of being faithful unto death. They put their lives on the line every day, trying to protect and serve. And all too often, they succumb to the reckless violence of a criminal. We should be honoring these men and women every day. You would never think, never, that honoring a fallen officer would be a problem. But to actress Jacqueline Guzman, it was a terrible inconvenience. She decided to voice her displeasure on one of the world's sewer spewing systems, aka TikTok, in a since-deleted video. But we have it. Take a look.
We do not need to shut down most of lower Manhattan because one cop died for probably doing his job incorrectly. They kill people who are under 22 every single day for no good reason, and we don't shut down the city for them. So, like, this is f***ing ridiculous. This is f***ing ridiculous. What if somebody's having a heart attack in this area? Nobody can get to them because it's all blocked off for one f***ing cop.
I know she probably didn't think that this would make her famous, but it made her infamous in all the wrong ways. New York City Police Benevolent Association President Patrick Lynch said, quote, "New Yorkers turned out by the thousands yesterday to help us honor our fallen brother. One person spreading hate cannot erase that. This kind of garbage has polluted the conversation for far too long. We need the New Yorkers who are standing with us to speak up and push back," unquote. I think what Lynch is saying is absolutely true. This type of rhetoric is what we constantly hear in the conversation about police. It's never about what can we do to help our police or support them. It's all about how every department is full of racist, awful, misogynistic cops who look for minorities to kill. I think also we see a lot of this rhetoric come from the entertainment industry, who have glorified killing cops in many films. But more than just that, police have become a whipping post for the left. All of the riots that came in the aftermath of the Michael Brown and especially George Floyd killing took aim at police officers. I would see graffiti on buildings that said ACAB and F12. I didn't know what this meant until I actually asked a cop. ACAB stands for All Cops Are Bad. F12 refers to the police and is in a song by the Atlanta-based rap group Migos, as they rap about 12 kicking in my door, which refers to a narcotics raid. So if you're listening to Migos right now, a group widely celebrated in pop culture, this is what you're listening to, and you're celebrating it with them. Officer Derek Chauvin is going to do lots of time for what he did to George Floyd. And after watching that trial, it's hard for me to understand why he did that, even in the context of what happened. And I say this because I had the occasion once to go through a police academy simulator in Denver, in which you go through school shooting scenarios, hostage scenarios, and all kinds of simulations. And it is extremely difficult because every split second is life or death. I think that really gets lost in the conversation because we all witnessed how bad Derek Chauvin acted, which causes a stereotype that all cops behave this way. And that's simply untrue. But that incident and others gave birth to the Black Lives Matter movement, which jettisoned police reform into a much, much bigger movement that aimed to destroy police departments altogether, which is nonsensical. In fact, the citizens of Minneapolis recently voted not to defund or disband the police department there. even in the wake of the Floyd situation. It's entirely irrational to think that a city would actually get rid of its police department, but in many ways, that's what BLM's aim was to do. And BLM does not have the aim of bettering police community relations if their first move is to get rid of police. There's nowhere to go with that. There's no compromise. So if we're going to have this conversation about how we can make communities and cities safer, we have to start from a position of logic and realism. Because Black Lives Matter was such a hugely successful campaign, it also tried to diminish any other group that tried to use its motto. If you said Blue Lives Matter, that became offensive to BLM. Even if you said All Lives Matter, somehow that became offensive and racist. And logical people know that it's not. But celebrities were rewarded for having anti-police rhetoric. It certainly happens in the rap industry. And then former quarterback Colin Kaepernick, who wore socks with pigs that had cop hats on, was rewarded by both the NFL and Netflix with a documentary where he could push every race-baiting trope that you can imagine. It just seems to be an upside-down world when criminals are rewarded and police are degraded and disparaged. You can almost bank on the fact that any criminal that decides to resist arrest or run is putting themselves in a very bad situation. A lack of cooperation, it's not going to end well. When I see car chases in Los Angeles, I think to myself, do they ever think they're actually going to escape? With every technology that we have now and all the cameras, I mean, who would think that they're actually going to outrun and escape the police? But you still see it. But elected officials have put police departments in bad positions when they fail to prosecute offenders and repeat offenders. It's a bad bail system. The superintendent of Chicago PD said as much recently. Chicago, as you know, is a lot like New York in terms of spiking crime and homicide. But when they arrest someone, they're back on the streets in less than 24 hours because the courts are letting them free. Think about the looters from the riots who didn't get prosecuted. Think about the looters that go into CVS and take whatever they want because if it's under $900, they won't prosecute. When you have lax policies and penalties, you are encouraging more crime. The majority of us who play by the rules are the ones that end up suffering, the people who struggle to make ends meet but need that prescription. We don't steal. Those of us who just need to take the subway to get from home to work have to worry about getting pushed in front of a train or being in the wrong place at the wrong time when a gang situation happens. You know, in 2014, less than a year into Bill de Blasio's first term as mayor, a guy who was avenging the deaths of Michael Brown and Eric Garner killed 2 NYPD cops in Brooklyn. At the funeral for one of the slain, officers turned their backs on Mayor de Blasio because they held him responsible for the deaths of those officers because he was trying to end so-called racist practices in the NYPD. Eric Adams is now faced with a similar situation. This is nothing new for the NYPD or New Yorkers. However, the demographics of the NYPD are changing. What used to be a very white police force is now both black and brown. And the 2 recently slain police officers are Hispanic. They weren't in the wrong place at the wrong time. They were doing their jobs exactly as they were trained to do. And they saved lives by their heroics. But could it be that because they are Latino, that maybe it's not getting the media coverage that it should? See, I think that when minorities who signed up for a career to save lives lose their lives like this, we have to have a reckoning. People treated George Floyd like he was a martyr. But are Rivera and Mora being treated with the dignity that they deserve for honorably serving and being faithful unto death? I mean, sure, the police force honored them tremendously. But are we the people doing that too? Or do we have more people like that actress that are inconvenienced and think that police kill people for fun every day? That's the sad, sick mentality of a lot of people. That's what a heavily successful BLM movement and far leftism can do to poison the mind. This should not be a case of Republicans being pro-police and Democrats being anti-police, but when you have a party that is being taken over by the Ilhan Omars and AOCs of the world, this is what you get. Those representatives are protected by cops all the time in a place like DC, which, by the way, has double the national average for crime. No word on what would happen if they lost their police protection. I just think we have to have common sense about this. Police officers go into that career knowing its dangers, but they still do it anyway. The rest of us, unless we're in the military, don't have to worry much about getting killed every single day. But yet, we've allowed our national conversation to be so anti-police that it's what gets all the coverage. I've been on a ride-along with a cop in North Charleston, South Carolina, and we were just cruising along when a call over the radio came in for a double homicide. And he sped like a bat out of hell to get out of there and told me to stay in the car. I could stay in safety. He could not. He had to run to the roar, as they say. Rudy Giuliani cleaned up a lot of New York City when things were really, really rough there. But mayors since him have been much softer. And I think that's why we've seen the city lose its grip. It's already in the doldrums from the pandemic. Prices are high still, and now crime is skyrocketing. I'm not seeing the penance for these crimes. I'm not seeing safer subways and cleaner streets. We are seeing the opposite, especially in the big cities of New York, Chicago, DC, and San Francisco. Listen to Officer Rivera's widow, Dominique Luzuriaga, deliver mournful yet powerful words.
Jason is so happy right now that all of you are here. Through pain and sorrow, this is exactly how he would have wanted to be remembered. Like a true hero. Or like I used to call him, Big P.O. Rivera. You have the whole nation on gridlock. And although you won't be here anymore, I want you to live through me. The system continues to fail us. We are not safe anymore. Not even the members of the service. I know you were tired of these laws, especially the ones from the new DA. I hope he's watching you speak through me right now. I'm sure all of our Blue family is tired too. But I promise, we promise, that your death won't be in vain. I love you to the end of time. We'll take the watch from here.
You can see how in this heart-wrenching speech that everyone stood to their feet. The DA that she is referring to is Alvin Bragg, a new DA that just took office on January 1st, who created a set of guidelines that are orders to not prosecute a person resisting arrest, and another one mandating that felony armed robbery be downgraded to misdemeanor shoplifting. Can you believe this? This is what Bragg wants for New York? These unsensible orders to prosecutors? See, this is why our justice system is problematic. But do you know that this position of district attorney in New York is an elected position? New Yorkers voted this guy in, probably because he campaigned on lessening these crimes in the name of racial justice. And this is what you get. So New Yorkers, do you stand by him? Your new interim governor could fire him. But does she have the chutzpah to do it? She has the authority, and she hasn't done it yet. It'd be a bold but a good move. And because she faces re-election this fall, This will no doubt come into play. And honestly, I hate to bring elections into this conversation, but in very liberal cities that have constituents that are easily swayed by emotions and the media-friendly movements that we saw in recent years, the election of bad leaders is certainly possible. And, well, in New York's case, all too common. And of course, we know how detrimental the New York Times can be as well. Lax prosecution is inexcusable. We cannot create policy on emotional movements and whims. Lax policies are what get police officers killed, and also what creates major risk to the public. We've seen far too much heat on police, and not near enough heat on bad policy, bad laws, bad officials, and bad criminals. We hear so much about prison pipelines, and in some cases, the idea of getting rid of prisons altogether. That's another AOC beauty right there. Yeah, let's get rid of police and prisons. But once again, there's another elected official pushing nonsense like that. I think to truly honor officers, both deceased and living, we have to create policies that maximize their ability to do their job effectively. It's disrespectful to continue a media campaign to disparage every single department. Are there some bad cops? Yes, but there are bad eggs in every profession. The difference is that most professions don't require you to risk your life every single day. And I fail to see a proper appreciation. Instead, you see the opposite. You see what that spoiled, entitled actress said on TikTok. Police officers do a lot for very little pay. Same with the military. And we continue to treat them poorly. And just as Patrick Lynch stated, this type of rhetoric has dominated the conversation for far too long. It's poisoned the conversation, in fact. Most people just want to be able to live their lives in peace and safely. And in order to do that, we have to support police and create sensible laws and repercussions for breaking them. Backing the blue shouldn't be just a catchphrase. It should be a no-brainer. Saying blue lives matter is not just common sense, but we shouldn't even have to say it. If someone is willing to put their life on the line for you, how should you thank them? How should you repay them? Officers Rivera and Mora went on a call for a domestic dispute and walked into gunfire from someone who has no respect or value for human life. And now leaders are meeting to find out what to do about this spike in violence. But who would want to become an NYPD officer if they don't have the support of their governor, their mayor, and their DA? As Rivera's widow said in her eulogy, being a cop's wife is hard. Lots of rearranged or canceled plans, lots of sacrifices, but they go into the job with the right heart. Sure, I don't want to see a cop to get on a power trip and aggressive with anyone, regardless of their color. But in police-civilian interactions, we see a lot of resistance, and that puts both parties at severe risk. We sure saw endless coverage of the trials of Derek Chauvin and Kim Potter. But do we see coverage for those who kill cops? Where's the intense wall-to-wall coverage of those trials? The media has failed you when it comes to this. They're in the business of proving a case of systemic racism in all police departments. But according to this Justice of Department report, in 2018, there were 61.5 million interactions between police and the public. White people were more likely than black people to have an interaction with police. And statistically, there was no statistical difference in white and black when it came to police-initiated contact. The stats don't lie in favor of the narrative that the public is being told. It's time to tell the truth and to back the blue, not just with our vocal support, but in whom we elect. I'm Beau, and that's the show.